Best of luck the rest of these playoffs. That's fantastic. I was going to just finish the story, John, about the Alabama-Oklahoma play, because one of the things on Saturday that we do is if we're watching a game and there's something that we don't understand as a crew, Doring, Watson, myself, our producers, is I'll immediately just shoot a text or a phone call to the SEC office. So Chuck Dunlap is the guy at the SEC who I kind of go back and forth with typically on this. The head of officiating, John McDade, I try not to bother him unless I feel like there's plenty of time in the day to do that. But this was a night game, and it was confusing to everybody. And you heard the broadcasters, Herbie and them were very confused by it as well. And to Chuck's credit, he was honest, and the first text, he goes, man, we're trying to figure out all of these playoff scenarios and stuff, but you saw it, and it was a blown call. And it was poorly done, it should not have been called. So I'm going back and forth, I'm like, okay, well, what are you as a league comfortable with me saying on the air, because we're going to show this? And he said, you can say, well, in fact, without reading his whole text, what he said was, you saw it, I think you're fine to say it was a missed call and would expect clarification from the conference regarding it. I said, so can I say that the SEC's acknowledging that it was a missed call? Or should I keep it as our opinion? He goes, you're fine keeping it as your opinion, you saw it, and then we'll handle it with a statement. So that kind of communication, it's great, because the league is very receptive to kind of explaining things to us. He goes, I got no problem with you saying that it was your opinion. It was that bad of a call. So it was. It really should not have happened. Just wanted to get that out of the way. Can I also, by the way, get a round of applause for the food, everybody that prepared the food, the silver, everything on here. I don't know where they are, but they're looking great somewhere. Appreciate y'all being flexible with me. I was supposed to be here last week. Then I had my 12-year-old had a play that she'd been working on, and it kind of popped out nowhere. We didn't know when it was, and then all of a sudden we get an email about, I don't know, 3 or 4 days before the play that it was Monday night. I'm like, man, I can't miss this 12-year-old play. So called Brian. Brian worked it out with Drew. Drew flipped with me. It all worked out. The play was awful, but she did great. So it's all I can hope for. I will never have that hour back, but she was great. God. If I had been here last week, I would not have gotten to come here 2 days after my Sooners whipped the crap out of Alabama. Yes, thank you. Sorry, Brian. Every other Bama here, yeah. Nobody's feeling bad for Alabama. We know that. Auburn won, you lost. Yeah, as long as that doesn't happen next weekend, then you'll be okay. Man, 5-5 season coming into that game. As a Sooner fan, it has been miserable. Injuries, firing of an offensive coordinator, an offensive line that had been atrocious, play calling that had been just as bad. It had been a really tough year. But since Saturday night, I couldn't get the smile off my face yesterday. And I'm sitting there in the studio and I'm looking at Doring and Watson and I'm like, that actually says Oklahoma 24, Alabama 3. Like, that's the most bizarre looking visual of the season, and even more so than Vanderbilt beating Alabama. 24-3. I mean, my kids tried to wipe the smile off my face yesterday, didn't work. My wife's honeymoon list, she tried to wipe it, didn't work. It's midnight, I'm putting together some tall, weird-looking heating element thing that goes on the porch, and I'm just smiling ear to ear, whistling Boomerson. I mean, it's, what a night to be a Sooner. Holy smokes. But it just kind of like, it goes hand in hand with the whole season, with the Auburn result, with the Ole Miss Florida result. So Little Nugget, 7 times this year, a ranked SEC team has lost on the road to an unranked team in the SEC, which is the second most times that's ever happened in the SEC. 7 times in a season, and I believe it was 3 times Saturday, with Auburn, Bama, and no Auburn, so Alabama and Florida. Yeah, it was wild to see that. I'm a Heisman voter. I actually had Jalen Milroe in consideration still, third, fourth range, and then pulled him off of that rather quickly. 3 interceptions. I credit the Oklahoma defense for what they did that night. He had nowhere to go. He had no time to throw the football. If you take away sacks, I think he still had 14 carries for 12 yards, which is very un-Alabama-like. So it was incredible, but that's what this whole season has been. Again, starting with Bama, losing to Vanderbilt. It took a while for us to realize Vanderbilt was actually a pretty good football team, and wouldn't that be something if they threw a wrench in Tennessee's plans on Saturday? Wouldn't that be a shame? At some point, we gotta get teams in the playoff, people. Won't be Vanderbilt, won't be Ole Miss. We got a whole conversation if A&M beats Texas and then does something to Georgia, or gets beaten in Atlanta. Do you hold them accountable? The playoff committee, I'm sure we'll talk about it. Somebody will ask me about it. They've got big decisions to make and precedents to set here, but all of this craziness, this unpredictability, the improbable stuff that's happening, it's massively a result of what most fans have whined and moaned about for the last few years, and that's NIL, and that's the transfer portal. And while it has certainly been something that is worth being concerned about, the fact that it is not regulated, and you can transfer all you want to transfer these days, it has created an incredible amount of balance and an incredible amount of parity that is, I think, phenomenal for this game. And in my estimation, this has been the most interesting, frankly, fun to follow college football season that I can remember. And I think it's for those reasons. It's for the Vanderbilts that shock Alabama and get to 6 wins. It's for this Saturday, regardless of what happens at school, but an upset engagement, an upset in Norman. That stuff's not supposed to happen. In most other seasons it doesn't. But because of transfers, because of an more even playing field in many ways, it happens. And all the complaining and whining and moaning that we do, I've noticed it's all for the offseason. We're not complaining right now. Like, we get to watch games and talk about games and missed calls and this player, he might have played in Florida last year, but Trevor Etienne's wearing a Georgia jersey now, so he's a dog. We don't care that we didn't like him for a couple of seasons. He's got that G on his head now. And that's the greatest stuff. Like, if they're wearing our uniforms, and they're wearing a copy of the helmet that we have on our fireplace or our toolbox or our bedroom shelf or wherever we got it, wherever our wife's making us hide it, we love it. Doesn't matter what they were before. We get to talk football. Ratings don't indicate a decline in interest or an increase in aggravation. That's for sure. Attendance doesn't do it. Ratings of television shows, let alone the games themselves, that's not being reflected. That there is some angst or anxiety or anger from college football fans because players are getting paid or they can bounce around whenever they want. They're watching. We're talking about it. And tomorrow's college football playoff rankings will be the most anticipated one to this day this year because it'll have the most movement. It'll have the most intrigue as it pertains to the SEC because now we're braced with this real conversation of can a 3-loss team get in when we always before had said, no, you lose 3, you're out. How do we know? We've never done this before. We've never had a 12-team playoff. We don't know what the heck they're thinking. We don't know how it's going to play out. Tomorrow will be interesting. And then the next Tuesday will be interesting. And then the next Sunday, we'll all know exactly how they make their decisions. It's been really, really fun to watch this. This usually by the first or second weekend of November, we at least know one of the SEC championship game representatives. Usually either Georgia in recent history has locked up the East or Alabama's locked up the West. It's almost always been the case by mid-November at the latest. The first team that locked up a spot in the SEC championship game that was definite is sitting in 3rd place right now. We know Georgia's going, but we don't know who they're playing. The ACC hasn't determined theirs yet. We know SMU's in. Based on what Miami does, it'll either be them or Clemson. The Big 12 is a complete mess, if you've looked at that. There's a 4-way tie for first. There are 9 teams within 1 game of first. And that's unreal. They're either 6 and 2 or 5 and 3 or 5 and 2 and 6 and 3. Whatever it is. There's 9 teams in that mix right here. It's a mess. And it's all matters because it helps determine who makes the playoff. And there's a good chance that most of the people in this room are going to have a team in the playoff. And you'd like to know possible matchups. And just because you love college sports and you love seeing younger people play football with a ton on the line, we're all going to be paying attention to games that in years past we never would have cared about at all. I guarantee you, plenty of people in this room will watch Arizona State. When would that ever happen? BYU, Houston, sure, why not? That means something. Colorado, Oklahoma State. Okay? We never would have paid attention to that. Miami, Syracuse. Better pay attention to it. It's going to matter. That was why this playoff was designed. A little more inclusion, a lot more late season interest. Instead of having 5 or 6 games this time of year that mean anything as it goes to the for the playoff, you probably got 15 to 20. It's an amazing thing. And it hasn't hampered, in my mind, the regular season, which a lot of people were worried about. I was once one of those people. Because it still pissed all you guys off that are Georgia fans when they lost Ole Miss. Still made you mad. It's like it would have done before. Right? It still drove you nuts that Texas fans can throw crap on a field and get a call reversed. Because for a brief moment in time, you thought, if this screws up our season, then you went and kick the crap out of them, which is always good. Okay, so that's the thing. We'll always root against Texas. That's good. We all have that in common, and I think everybody in the league is getting to that point. But quickly, we said that they're just so hateable, you know, like they just are. I don't know if it's the color. I don't know if it's the lawn. I don't know if it's Matthew McConaughey. I don't know what it is. Easy to dislike. They're easy to dislike. You know, I tell you guys this every time I'm here, but my Saturdays in the fall are the greatest days of my year. With Dory, with Watson, with our producers, watching games, 6 games in this bank of TVs that are all connected, 2 more up here. Watching games, reacting. One of us reacts to one thing, the other 2 trying to find it. What the heck I missed? Where's it? What monitor? Left the middle monitor. By the time the show's over at the end of the night, we're pretty exhausted mentally from just trying to follow everything. It's, but my goodness, what a job it is. I appreciate kind of getting to come see you guys every year. I appreciate getting to travel around the South a little bit this time of year, talking to fan bases. I like it. Appreciate that y'all watch what we do. You may not watch the Tuesday SEC Nows, you may not watch the Friday ones, but from what I understand, most of you watch that Saturday night show, and many of you go to bed with it on, you wake up Sunday morning and it's still there. Thank you. And if my voice is the first one you hear on Sunday, I'm sorry. Okay? Probably shouldn't be that way, but those Saturdays are way better than watching 12-year-old plays, I can tell you that. Really lucky to get to do it. We're all anticipating the same as you all are, decisions that the committee's going to have to make. To me, the biggest question is how are they going to manage conference championship game losers? And is there a punishment for getting to that game but losing that game? Whether it's your second loss, whether it's your third loss, for A&M it could be a 4th loss. How do you handle that? And that, I think, is the biggest question that they've all got to deal with. They probably wrestle with it in Dallas every time they meet every weekend. That's what I can't wait to see. Because without question, it's going to be significant. It's going to be significant. And the idea that Lane Kiffin was talking about how it's not advantageous to go to the playoff, and I've been talking to a lot of coaches and they don't really want to go to the playoff. You think Lane, or the championship game, you think Lane would like a trip to Atlanta now? Right? It's his only way to get in. He's not going. When we discovered, and our researchers all the way throughout the day Saturday were giving us these scenarios, right? All right, Ole Miss losing knocks Tennessee out. And then like an hour later, out of the SEC championship game, not the playoff. Then like an hour later, like, wait a minute, Tennessee might still be in. They got a chance. Well, damn, dude, you told me they were out, so I told the viewers they were out. Now they're back? Yeah, hold up, don't say that they're out. Well, I already said that they're out, Stewie, because you told me to say they were out. And then like 2 hours later, Tennessee is out. Well, good, because now I told them they might have been back in, so now they're out, we're sure they're out. These are the kind of conversations we have. Stewie, give me an answer, man. Confirm before reporting. These field stories, by the way, I gotta tell you this, and then I'll take all the questions you guys want to fire at me. These field stories, the league hates the field stories, okay? You know, like, I don't know if you saw, Oklahoma got fined $100,000 twice because they had 2 field stories, which actually is a win, because I thought we were gonna get $350, because it's 100, and then it's 250, and then it's 500, so I thought, why not? Welcome to the league. You get 100 and 250 all at once, because you stormed it once, backed you off, stormed it again. They let them off the hook, so they got $200,000, which Alabama, by the way, made $200,000, which is the dumbest rule I know. You stormed. You did too, that's right, you did too. Arizona State did too the other day, and I don't think the Big 12 has that rule. Did you see that deal that Arizona State BYU? They pushed everybody to the opposite. They didn't make it go back in the seats. You were never going to get that done, but just wait one more play, just wait one more play. Did you imagine BYU going to hit that Hail Mary? And if any school was going to, but they didn't. But they, what's that? Yeah, 2 yards short. Yeah, 2 yards short. But we shouldn't say that this year, right? Aaron Murray's not here. Sorry, that was 4. I'm sorry. I'll take everything you want to give me here when okay. So the field stories, the league does it. And so we have to be careful about showing it, about talking about it. But the Vanderbilt-Bama one, when the Vandy students are walking at 2.5 miles and they toss it in the Cumberland River, which was just an amazing scene because we were Tennessee fans did the same thing. They threw it in the Tennessee River, right? Is that what's, yeah. I might have got it mixed up, but so we're not supposed to show them, but sometimes it's in the video, But our producers get so, that's the thing. So the league will call our producers if they're worried about something or if they want to make sure something gets addressed correctly. Right? So that day the league is calling our producers. Don't show the field zone, don't show them walking down Broadway with the goalpost, don't show them. And so we're sitting here and we're showing. And the producer, as I'm talking, I have an earpiece so the producer can talk to me. And he goes, don't glorify the field storm. Don't glorify the field storm. And I can't say anything back to the producer because it's going to go out on the air. But I'm just like, they quit showing it. Quit showing the goalpost from a helicopter cam going down Broadway in Nashville. Why are we showing it? I can't talk about it. So it all came back on Saturday when they stormed the field and where they stormed Auburn, but they stormed Knoxville, Gainesville. But they didn't really do it. Good for Florida. We stormed it twice and more. Don't glorify the field storm. I got it. Don't glorify the field storm. So anytime you watch a field storming in the SEC, don't turn to me to expect me to be digging into it. God forbid I glorify the field storm. That has resulted in at least over $500,000 going to the University of Alabama. Thank goodness, because they were really, really going broke, so they needed that money. More than a charity might need it, more than the needy. Give it to Alabama. Thank you. They'll make their budget now, so that's good. I disagree with that rule. I think it's most ridiculous. I understand, for the record, I did go to the league office. I asked him, is this really, does this help? Why are we giving it to the university that just got beat, that kind of prompted the field storming, the celebration? Well, because we're trying to sway universities into making sure that their students don't do it. So, yeah. So the 20 to 50,000 people that have just enjoyed the time of their life watching their team, who had no chance to beat that team, are all of a sudden going to have this light bulb moment and say, damn, we can't get Alabama that money. You better stay in the money. Give the money somewhere else, please. All right, that's it for me this go around. I'll answer all your questions, or however many they let me answer. Yes, sir.
You mentioned about the playoff committee.
Yeah.
There's only two people that have any connection to the SEC. I'm curious how that committee is actually picked, because football is a culture, and I don't feel like that the Southeast is getting, their fair share of representation.
Yeah, I don't know how it's picked. But I do know this, and I probably mentioned this here before. In 2014, so one of the things the committee does, and I don't know if they still do it might have stopped in COVID, but they used to do this where they would invite 12 national media members to Dallas on like Monday, Tuesday, early in the season. And you would go through the entire process. So for instance, I think I went in 2014, it was a 14 playoff, or 15 maybe, it was a 14 playoff. And they said, okay, you all are going to pick the 4 playoff teams, and when I leave this room until you do it, based upon the 2010 season. Okay, so we took the 2010 season, which was Auburn over Oregon in the championship game, but they stopped it after the conference championship games. And they said, now pick your 4 teams. And so we had to go through the entire exercise, from ranking teams in groups of 10, and then comparing those rankings. And then everybody's composite rankings go on the screen. You have any issues with this? Somebody raises their hand, yeah, I don't know how this team could be ahead of this team. All right? If 3 other people in that room wanted to discuss it further, it would be discussed further. And then again, you take another vote. And this process takes forever. But I'll say this, I left that room and I left Dallas that day thinking, there's not one person who's going to sway an entire room. There aren't 2 people that are going to sway an entire room. So I feel really good. And there were a lot of rumors out there that when Barry Alvarez was on it, that he was pushing the Big Ten, pushing the Big Ten, pushing the Big Ten. I don't think it's possible. I don't think it works that way. I think it's set up really, really fairly. So I felt good about that. But I don't know how it's chosen. Oh, yeah. Yes.
Arizona State had first down and goal to go, and they end up on the 50-yard line. I mean, that's about the dumbest thing I've ever seen a coach do. I mean, all they had to do was, if they didn't make it, the other team would have 96 yards to go with a little time.
Yeah, so he said Arizona State had the ball on the 1 essentially and backed it up to the 50, and that's when that play where he just threw it as high and far outside as he could. I think you probably, I don't know, I'd be curious what our coach over here would do in that situation. I mean, are you better off leaving a team even 10 seconds from their own 4-yard line, or trying to just maintain possession and run the clock out? You don't want him to have the ball, right? Yeah, run the clock. And he thought he did. It just one step drop and throw the ball as far as you can. It took 6 seconds instead of 7, which is what ultimately gave BYU that last chance. Yes.
How many, we going to 16-team playoff, and if we do,
We're going to 16-team playoff, and if we do, is that the end of the conference championships? No, I think the more teams you go, I would tend to believe the more of the conference championships will remain in play. Here's what I would like to have happen. I would like for the committee to come out and essentially say, if you are good enough in a Power 4 league, we've determined you're the Power 4 league. And yeah, the SEC and the Big Ten are on a bit of a different plane than the Big 12 and the ACC, and I get it. They're all power leagues. They're anywhere from 14 to 18 teams in size. None of them have divisions in them. So if you are in the top 2 over the course of an 8 or 9 game regular season and have earned a spot in that championship game, you can't lose that spot. You're playing for potential bye, but you cannot lose the spot. Now, the other side of that is, what happens if you're 0-3 in non-conference and then you get hot? You have to be held accountable in some ways for your non-conference. So that hard and fast rule wouldn't necessarily apply. Like for instance, LSU lost a game to USC in the non-conference. Up until last weekend, they had 2 weeks ago, they had a chance to go to the SEC championship game. I don't think that rule would apply to them. But I hate a world where a really good team through conference play gets to the conference championship game and then gets booted from the playoff because they lost a game that otherwise they would have been in. So maybe it's this. Maybe you make that the next to last ranking matter. And you say, if you were in the playoff field last Tuesday, then you're not going to fall from the playoff field because you lost the conference championship game. Conference championship still means a first round bye, or for other leagues, the opportunity to host a playoff game, potentially. Yeah. So they drew it up that way, where there's still something on the line for winning a conference championship. But I don't like the idea that losing that conference championship game, like if Georgia loses to Texas or Texas A&M in Atlanta and doesn't get it, I think that's a shame. They played a very difficult schedule. They've got good wins. I don't think it should cost them, and I would hope that it doesn't. It did last year. Last year was 4 teams. Now we're at 12. Florida State were in it last year. This year too. They weren't this year. Yes, sir.
You mentioned Georgia, if they were to lose the championship game, SEC championship game. Well, the 2 teams we lost to were both top 5 teams.
Yeah.
And we beat Texas and we beat Tennessee.
Right.
So that alone ought to put us
Yeah,
in.
no, I don't believe they'd be. I think Georgia's as good as they're, honestly, at this point. Yes, sir.
How many ranked opponents has Texas beat this year?
That's a great question. So, how many ranked opponents has Texas beat this year? None.
How many left play?
I had a buddy currently ranked.
How many did you get?
How many have that Georgia? Is that it?
That's it.
Yeah. So a buddy of mine in Oklahoma sent me a funny picture. You guys can't see this, but it's got 15 SEC logos here under the category of. So the question is, have you played at least 2 SEC teams with a winning conference record? 15 schools here say, yes, obviously, we play in the SEC. A school in the middle, also yes, is UMass. And then under no is Texas. That answers the question. Yes, sir.
If Texas were to beat A&M, which I hope they do not, but, and they play Georgia, will they have to lose by 60, 75 points to be out of the playoffs, or?
It is, I don't know that they would be. They're starting at 3, what's A&M, we'll find out tomorrow. A&M's probably going to be in the 16, 17 range, 18 range, I don't really know. Let's guess. I mean, what is a Texas loss to A&M that put them at? 8, 9, or 10? No, I know. Oh, they would beat A&M, so they'd still be 3. I don't think the committee drops them from 3 to out of the field. To Georgia? Who the committee's going to have at 6 or 7? Worst case? No, I don't. The committee Ward Manuel will look you right in the eye on that Sunday afternoon and say,
Keep Alabama and Mississippi out.
yeah, probably.
Wow.
I know. I don't care if you have 112 teams in this thing. You're not gonna satisfy everybody. It isn't gonna happen. Like, let's look at how many teams does the Big 12 end up with? Probably 1, right? They've all beaten each other up, but now does the ACC get a second one? I mean, if Miami goes and beats SMU, are you knocking SMU out? They have 1 loss, and it's the BYU who's a ranked team. If Miami beats Syracuse and loses a heartbreaker to SMU, is Miami at 2 losses getting knocked out? Probably not. I think the ACC's got 2. I think we've probably got now 3. Big 10 4, Big 12 1, Group of 5 1, 4 3 and 7, 2 is 9, 10 and 4. I mean, I think this weekend cost the league a team, but I still think it's probably 3. I think Georgia's one of them, and I think Texas is one of them. Let's see if A&M, Tennessee is one of them. Maybe we get a fourth if A&M beats Texas and Georgia. Which is Kyle Field does weird things, and they can beat Texas. I don't see them beating Georgia. Yes, Mr. Hattatawa.
You think with the new format where the top 5 best conference champions get buys, will push Notre Dame to try to join a conference?
That's a good question. Will this playoff format that rewards the top 5 conference champions, top 4 conference champions with buys, push Notre Dame to join a conference? Probably not. It probably won't, because what Notre Dame's going to get is a home game this year, future years, and a home playoff game at Notre Dame is going to rake in some money, some viewership, some NBC money. I don't think they're that interested in joining. They would have by now. Yeah. Yes.
It was uncharacteristic for Alabama to lose 3 games this year. Do you think a Nick Saban coach team, Alabama team, would be undefeated?
Would a Nick Saban coaching Alabama team be undefeated this year? I don't know. I mean, I mean, it's too much parity. Probably not. I don't think they'd be not 8-3, but this new college football, I think impacts everybody. And I don't think a Nick Saban team would be sitting here at 11-0 right now. They wouldn't have lost Vanderbilt. I don't believe. I mean, David Pavia was fun that day and has been all year. But I've got to think at defense with Nick Saban partially in charge doesn't lose that game. Doesn't allow maybe one of those big plays to happen to change the game. I'm trying to figure out the Oklahoma game, honestly. I don't know what happened. They looked unprepared. The Oklahoma defense has been good. Statistically, it's kind of gotten skewed because they're on the field all the time. For the first time on Saturday, they got to spend a little time on the sideline because the offense looked capable and picked up some first downs. And so every time the defense came back out, they were fresh and they were attacking and they were effective. I don't know that they were as prepared as normal a Nick Saban team would have been. So it's hard to say what happened there. I don't think they're undefeated. I don't know that anybody would be in this league this year undefeated. Hot seat coaches so my buddy and I were just talking about today. Hot seat coaches in the SEC. I don't think anybody gets fired, which out of 16 teams is pretty wild. Coming into the season, Napier was there. He's safe. Clark Lee was there. He's certainly safe. I don't think LSU pulls the plug on Brian Kelly at this time. Auburn's recruiting too well to do anything with Hugh Freeze. Venables locked up his spot for next year for sure. Yeah, Coach of the Year is interesting too. 3 weeks ago I would have said it's Clark Lee without a doubt at Vanderbilt. I would still consider that. He might still be the front runner, to be honest. On a year that Kirby loses 2 games, hell, he doesn't get it on years that he runs the table. So I don't know that he would get it. Lane certainly wouldn't this year. Napier, the early struggles would prevent that from happening. So it might still be Clark. I mean, they could be 6-6 and he get Coach of the Year. And I don't know how many people would have a real issue with that. That's a good. I haven't thought about who said Beaver. Yeah, I haven't thought about Beaver. That actually. I don't know if there's a team playing better right now in this league than they are. Nobody who wants that team right now. I mean, they're only a 2.5 point dog at Clemson. And Clemson can still go to the ACC championship game. They've won 5 in a row against really, for the most part, good opposition. Scrap Wofford Saturday, but it might be him. Yeah, I honestly, God, we've had this talk for so many weeks, and his name doesn't come up that often, but it should. Beamer, Lee, I think those would probably be the top 2. Yeah.
Aren't you based in Charlotte?
We are in Charlotte, yes.
That's not an SEC city, isn't that the capital of this?
Well, Birmingham's the location of the SEC itself. We're in Charlotte. I don't know if I ever told the story. So we had a network, ESPNU, all college network. We still have it. We still do studio programming, really, except for recruiting stuff. That was always based in Charlotte. And it was in Charlotte because when we started ESPNU, we didn't have an extra studio in Bristol. We had a big studio space in Charlotte that we basically used for production. Some producers would kind of go work out of there, game producers. We had some play-by-play booths that we would use some in Charlotte. I don't really know why we ever had that, but when ESPNU started, they said, you know what, we can turn this space into a studio and this space into a studio, so let's do it here. So that was there. 2014, we started SEC Network. So at least it's in the footprint. They honestly like the fact that it's not in an SEC state, so nobody's whining about it. And it's an airport that can get us anywhere in this league, like, incredibly easily. We are 90 minutes from Columbia, 4 hours from Knoxville, 4 hours and 3.5 from Athens. I mean, we're not terribly far from a lot of SEC places, but it's convenient. It's a great, convenient location. And a good city. Good place to live.
You said you had a boat.
Yeah. So, off the record, I don't know how it's not Travis Hunter, to be honest. I mean, just this past week, he had, 4 catches, 90 yards, 1 or 2 touchdowns, 7 tackles, and a pass breakup. There was almost a Heisman moment interception. If anybody saw the near interception he had, that would have been, you'd have seen that 20 times a day, anywhere you looked, between now and Heisman night. So I think it's Travis Hunter. I'd probably, at this point, put Ashton Jeanty at Boise 2. I mean, he's got 27 touchdowns and over 2,000 yards rushing. You look at competition, all I can go to is look at how he did against Oregon. He ran for over 190 yards against Oregon, number 1 team in the country. They almost beat him. So I would go those 2, 1 and 2. I honestly had no real 3. We have to fill out 1, 2, and 3. So I've got to look. I mean, I've got to do some more digging, and then maybe it's Dylan Gabriel. That third spot, there's not an obvious choice though. Not as I see it. Okay. Jackson Dart. Yeah, probably not. Thank you guys for, yes, yeah, one more. What's that?